you got a sense of using your hips and using the hip hinge to move load. Now we can start working on some more refinements. The first thing I look for with somebody's swing, when they start swinging the weight up, is their connection with the bell on the backswing. One of the first issues that usually comes up when people start swinging is their swing is disconnected. And you can already look, if you see me swinging this way, it's going to look like not nearly as powerful and efficient as this. And more importantly, this disconnected swing, and by connection I mean my arm disconnected from my body on the backswing, is all going into my back. The weight is digging down here. I'm digging a trench in between my feet with the bell. And I can already feel my back starting to tense up and seize up. So we don't want that. We want to throw from the hips, lower body throws, not from the upper body. It's not an upper body exercise. Lower body throws and upper body controls with the swing. So the thing you look for is the connection. When your arms and the weight they carry are coming down, you wait until they are connected. When you have connected, then everything goes back together. Same thing on the way up. On the way up, all the way up, and the last thing is the arms disconnect. So it's a wave-like pattern, connect and back. And then I stand, float, connect, and back. All together. This is where some unloaded movement can be helpful, because you can practice and rehearse that feeling, get some muscle memory and some pattern memory. So here I am waiting and connected. Here I am not waiting. This is me. I'm trying to go back. As soon as I see that bell coming to me, I sit back and I get disconnected. My rhythm is off. The kettlebell is throwing me around. I'm no longer throwing the kettlebell around. So look for connection. Look for heel drive. Heel drive means that I'm not up on my toes here and shooting my knees forward and trying to push the pull. Now there are times in some progressions where we will do some things like this. But at the outset, really focus on that heel drive so you feel your hips doing as much work as possible in the swing. And if it helps to lift your toes, to confirm that heel drive, it'll make your hip extension a lot more powerful. You saw in that last one, I just put a little bit more force through my feet to throw it up. Which brings me to my next point, foot force. Pressure into the ground, that's what gives you power. It is not this movement of throwing my hips back and forth that gives me power. Sure, there's a little bit of power there, but the real power comes from me engaging with the ground. If I didn't have the ground underneath me, that wouldn't mean anything. So don't get lost in this hip drive, hip flick, hip shoot forward. It goes by many names. Don't get lost in that. Focus on the feet. The movement starts on the ground. And that foot conformation will make sure your hips and the right, the heel drive will make sure that you're using the posterior chain, because heels connect with hips, rather than pushing through the toes, because toes connect with the knees, the anterior chain. Toes and knees, that's a pushing pattern. Heels and hips, that's a pulling pattern. So I want to differentiate between pushing the pull and pulling the pull, which is what we want to do. We want to pull the pull. So we're trying not to squat up and down with the weight. Unfortunately, by and large, especially in the US, most people who learned how to swing a bell learned how to swing a bell something like this. Great. It's not necessarily a terrible thing, but it's not a pulling motion. We use that as a jumping motion. So when we want to practice that kind of pushing power, we'll do other movements. We won't use the swing to do that movement. Most of us are knee dominant. Most of us overly push and use our knees for everything instead of using our core. And by core, I mean every muscle that is attached to the pelvis. That is how I define the core. If it attaches to the pelvis, it's the core. So we want to bring a lot more muscles from the core into this movement, and not just the muscles of the calves and the knees. There's plenty of other places where they get lots of attention. These are much more difficult muscle groups to give some attention to. When you are throwing and beginning to throw the weight up, having some active scaps is also important. what we try to avoid is that dead arm, weight just flies out in front, back starts to round and turtle up a little bit. And then one of the ways you can work on that is keeping your scaps active and rolling back. As your hips transfer the weight forward, your scaps roll back and redirect the weight upward. So that's what makes it feel wavy. If I just have dead scaps and I throw my hips forward, the weight is just going to keep pulling and pulling and pulling away from me. So this helps to keep the weight close to my body, rising up, re-engaging, and then sitting back. So it's a lot more vertical at the top instead of continuing to shoot forward and throwing me with it. So scap pull to control the bell versus no scap pull, no upper body, and lots of opportunities to start digging and pulling. And then lastly, when you grab a kettlebell to swing it, you can use the hook grip. So that means it's in the fingers, it's not mashed. Don't mash the handle into a crush grip. Just a hook grip is all you need. And all you need to get in the bell are rock and roll fingers. These two fingers together represent your strongest two fingers. These two, middle finger and ring finger together, strongest two for grip. Your index finger and your pinky finger can help, but they're not nearly as important. All you need is those two, and you should be able to swing whatever you want to swing. Bring whatever else you can into the window, but don't, especially on the smaller bells, don't mash all of your fingers in there and think that they all need to be part of the game. They don't. Some of them can be left on the bench out here on the sidelines. If you use that rock and roll grip as a little memory tool, that's all you need. I'm grabbing them on the corners. I am not grabbing up on the flat. Grab them on the corners. This will also let your arms lay down the V of your pelvis versus try to sit flat and push on your belly. Let's come around the side and gives you more space to swing from. So once you get the handle of the swing, there's lots more little things, little refinements that will make the rest of your swinging career a lot more enjoyable.